So you're looking for a place to rent in the city, and my God, you had no idea how difficult it would be. Not only are rents insanely high in Toronto, but you feel like you have to expose all financial and personal details to a prospective landlord, and you're not getting any commitment from the ones you're talking to. And you're starting to freak out because you have to move out in the next week. Well, this video is a crash course on what you should prepare to make a compelling offer to landlords. I'm going to start with why it's so hard to lease here in Ontario and why landlords are so picky. And then we're going to go into what you can prepare to make a good offer given your circumstances, what to do if you have low or no Canadian income or credit, and lastly, where to find properties for lease. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jonathan Lee and I'm a Toronto-based real estate agent. At the start of my real estate career, I worked a lot more leases, and while I still do the odd lease here and there, I tend to field a lot more calls from prospective tenants on what to do. I know how challenging it can be to find a place to rent, so my hope is this video will put you in the best position to find a place quickly. Over my career as a realtor, I found that leases are actually some of the most difficult agreements to negotiate. And the reason is because a relationship between a landlord and tenant needs to be established based on trust alone. That trust is mainly one-sided in the landlord trusting the tenant. They have to trust that the tenant is who they say they are, that they will pay their rent consistently and on time, that the tenant will be responsible with their property, and that they won't cause any headaches. And the relationship between a landlord and tenant must be maintained for at least a year, but sometimes significantly longer. So it feels a bit like an arranged marriage. And it's weird because on the one hand, as a tenant, you want to be as upfront with the landlord as possible. You just switched jobs, you're expecting a baby. But you also don't want to freak them out and have them reject you by telling them too much too soon. I want to get a dog, my partner might move in with me after they're done their lease in 6 months. So it can feel a bit like walking on a tightrope. Now you may or may not know this, but all residential tenants in Ontario are protected by the Ontario Residential Tenancies Act, which governs the majority of rental properties from things like excessive rent increases, unlawful evictions, non-humanitarian rules for use and enjoyment of a property, and your overall rights with regards to who and what you can bring and do in your unit. Once you become a tenant, you inherit a large number of rights that protect you in a sweeping number of situations. Unfortunately, some or many of these situations do not fit with most landlords' desired or intended use of the property. And on the landlord's side, there are very few protections from bad tenants. Once a tenant occupies their property, it's extremely difficult to vacate a problem tenant unless they either volunteer to leave or you get a legal court order to evict them. Even if tenants aren't paying their rent, there is a long stretch of time that tenants can exercise their rights that allow them to stay in their unit before being taken to the landlord-tenant board for non-payment of rent and officially being evicted by a sheriff. And before that time, there's not much a landlord can legally do about it. In saying this, I'm not trying to garner any sympathy for landlords, but more so to give you an idea of what landlords have to fear in bringing in the wrong tenant. Landlords now more than ever are on high alert. There is the wavering economy, an increase in unemployment, and a sense of struggle among the working due to inflation. With potential desperate times comes desperate measures, and a landlord does not want to end up in a situation where their property is collateral damage for a tenant's unfortunate circumstances. There's also been talk in the news of people's homes getting sold from under them without their knowledge, homes being re-rented on Airbnb, homes being divided up and being re-leased again to new tenants as rooming houses, and that's just on some of the latest trends for things for landlords to be concerned about. And of course, there is a whole trust and verification side. The faking of documents, the consistency of a tenant's income, how the tenants will care for the property, will there be excessive wear to the home, will they bother the other residents of the building? The list can go on. So all this is to say that landlords are extremely picky with who they bring in as tenants because allowing in the wrong tenant can put them in a worse situation than if the unit were vacant. So how can you make an offer to lease more compelling for landlords who sound like they are highly skeptical of all tenants? Well, that comes down to building levels of trust and showing through the right documentation that 1, you are who you say you are and not some made-up person. 2, your income source is real, reliable, and secure. And 3, you are a trustworthy, reliable person. So let's go through how you're going to do that. How you're going to show that you are who you say you are and not some made-up person. First, provide proof of ID for every individual that is going to occupy the lease, excluding children. I like adding 2 pieces of legal ID. your driver's license, your PR card, your home country's passport, etc. Do not provide your social insurance number or credit card for obvious reasons. If there are any inconsistencies in the legal names or birth dates, provide an explanation. Maiden names, a faulty translation, etc. Whatever it is. Provide a link to your LinkedIn profile and your social media. This is digital proof, mainly to show that you're a real person and you function within society and you have real connections in this world. Provide a letter stating your reasons for moving and a picture of yourself. It's best using your own words to ensure your explanation of why you're leaving your current living arrangements to move into this new rental property is communicated. The picture will help humanize your offer to lease. Consider including a copy of your resume. This is an uncommon thing to include to an offer for lease, but I received it once for a self-employed individual and it provided a ton of context on how this person found jobs and made money. It also adds an aspect of professionalism to an application. It's a complete professional profile and just shows that you're a serious individual and that you've been working consistently even if it hasn't been in Canada. Documentation to show that your income is real, reliable, and secure. If you're employed by a large company, you will need a job letter from your company stating how long you've been with them, your remuneration or salary, your position, as well as the contact information from someone in human resources that can verify the information. Ideally, the contact will have an email address with the company's domain name. You will also want to provide 2 of your latest pay stubs to provide proof of what your income is after taxes. Regarding pay stubs, Ceridian is by and far the largest pay stub provider in the province, yet every so often I see a pay stub that looks like it was done up in Microsoft Word, and this will probably raise the flags. So if you're in a situation like this, it may help to have bank statements supplement the pay stubs to show the money coming into your account. If your pay stubs are less than what you stated in your job letter remuneration, you should write an explanation for why that is. You took fewer hours in the last few weeks to take care of a family member, you are currently on leave, etc. If your company is very small or does not have much visibility locally, provide additional proof of its existence, a LinkedIn page, their office location, the names of the owners, as well as their business card and websites. Provide anything and everything that can be used as social and financial proof. If not, the landlord will be wondering about the legitimacy of the workplace and their ability to stay in business. I once could not find any information at all of a small company and we had to reject a prospective tenant. Truthfully, the business could have been made up entirely and the landlord just didn't want to take that risk. If your company doesn't have anything that is readily verifiable online, or you work for family or are self-employed and paid hourly, are a contractor or are a commissioned salesperson, then provide proof through scanned documents. Use your last year's notice of assessment tax documents, redacting any sensitive information, or your bank statements showing your income regularly coming into your account. This may seem very excessive, and it is, but providing these documents will help build the case of being an honest and trustworthy person. If you are asked for additional supporting documentation and provide a very limited view, for example, only 1 pay period's worth of pay, it will look like you're hiding something and may raise the alert flags of the landlord. If you don't have Canadian income but are collecting income in US dollars or a European currency but can provide proof through English letterhead, that may be sufficient as long as you can show the income being transferred into your Canadian bank accounts and your foreign bank account holder names matching. You will also need to provide proof of Canadian credit. Pull a full credit report from TransUnion or Equifax. Your full credit report needs to not just have your credit score, but also your financial liabilities and history listed on your credit report. Having a not so great score may be acceptable as long as it's easy for you to speak to it. Look over your entire credit report and write notes to any late payments or large financial obligations so it's easy to understand for the landlord. For example, if there is a $20,000 line of credit, explain that it's for the purchase of your car or something else. If you have a credit card with a large balance, show that you are paying it off consistently. Some people have lived in Canada for many years yet have almost no Canadian credit because they've only used cash or debit and maybe had their cell phone plan registered with a relative. If this is the case, you will want to explain this and tell them when you signed up for your first credit card and who your cell phone plan was registered to. Again, context is critical. If you're over 30 years old and have no credit profile, it will seem a bit strange and the landlord will probably question your legitimacy as a person or if you are concealing your real credit. What to do when you don't have income? If you don't have any Canadian income or credit, your honest to God best bet is to prepay a portion of your rent. Start with an additional 2 months of rent. So first 2 months, last 2 months of rent. If this is not enough, go further. First 4 months, last 2 months of rent. First 6 months, last 2 months, etc. You will be able to find a place to rent if you pay your entire year up front, definitely. If you're not capable of providing anything past first and last month's rent, then you're going to need to show how you're going to be able to make sure rent gets paid every month. If it's in the form of money being sent to you monthly, show the monthly bank statements and explain who it's from. If it's from the job you intend on getting, get the job first, then find a place. If you have no way of proving your ability or reliability in paying rent, then unfortunately, you're very unlikely to be able to find a rental. When you have pets. If you were to ask any landlord if they would prefer a tenant with a pet or one without, they will prefer the tenant without a pet 100% of the time. You are not legally required to disclose that you have a pet, and in fact, if you are to acquire a pet after moving in, there's not a whole lot that can be done about it by the landlord. However, every resident in the property has a right to quiet enjoyment to the residents, and if your pet disrupts the quiet enjoyment of another resident through excessive noise or pet dander that travels through the shared HVAC duct systems and triggers the allergies of another resident, then a case can be built for the landlord to evict you from their unit. With that said, use your own judgment whether to disclose a pet or not. I find small dogs and cats that are well behaved are easier to house. Large animals and exotic pets are difficult. Where to find places to rent? The obvious place to start searching for properties is online, but depending on your budget and your needs, whether you're looking for a bedroom, a bachelor or a basement apartment, or for a house, these websites might be the best fit for you. For smaller rentals, Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, Craigslist, PadMapper, Viewit. For medium-sized to larger rentals, Realtor.ca. And if you are going to hire a realtor, keep in mind that they will only have access to properties listed on the MLS or Realtor.ca. Or seek out apartment buildings. Many apartment buildings don't advertise much online and will instead just have a sign listing their vacancy in front of the building. There are many strips in the city with building after building of apartment rentals. Your best way to find them is to actually physically go past them. So look out for some strips on Google Maps or spend a day noting the buildings and the contact information on the billboards. In some instances, these rentals may be more open to lower credit and income than other smaller landlords. I've listed a lot of personal financial documents today. Do you need to provide all this documentation? No, you technically don't, but you're probably watching this video because you've tried finding a place on your own and your ways aren't working. I've gone way overboard on some of the requirements here only to make sure that the most challenging profiles still have a shot of renting a unit. If you don't want to provide multiple IDs or your notice of assessment tax documents, that's fine and that's totally up to you. And you still may be successful in finding a place because your overall profile is still attractive to many landlords. But if your profile is less than ideal and the landlord has many inquiries from prospective tenants, they're probably not going to go back and forth with you and patiently wait while you collect and get copies of your supporting documents. They're going to just move on to the next tenant that already has everything prepared. So doing the heavy lifting up front, showing them who you are and providing context for your circumstances will put you in the best position to finding a place to rent. I hope everyone found this video useful, and if you did, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. It can be stressful and no more does an immediate need have to be filled than finding a place to live. So I wish you all the best of luck. Cheers!